Let's talk about spinal cord and the associated tracts. Before starting, let's talk about spinal cord. Ends at the lower. It ends at the lower border of L1 vertebrae in adults, and the lumbar puncture, right, is done at the level of L3 and L4 vertebrae, and the subarachnoid and the subarachnoid space is at the level of, you can see S and S, two times S, so it is at the level of S2 vertebra. ठीक है. So the tracts. So let's talk about first ascending tract. तो ascending tract में हमारे पास दो है. पहला dorsal column होता है, फिर spinothalamic tract. dorsal column tract का basically function is pressure, vibration, fine touch and proprioception. Very important, learn करना है. इसमें दो टाइप के होते हैं जहाँ से ये मूव करते हैं, मीडियली एंड लैटरली. जो मीडियली होता है उसको हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं, fasciculus gracilis, और जो लैटरली होता है उसको हम लोग क्यूनिएटस बोलते हैं. fasciculus cuneatus बोलते हैं. तो जो gracilis होता है, that goes to the lower body and the legs, and the cuneatus goes to upper body and the arms. And also how to remember, gracilis is more medially, and when you see your body, the medial portion goes downwards till your leg. तो gracilis lower limb के लिए होता है, cuneatus upper limb के लिए होता है, right. जो spinothalamic tract होती है उसमें again you have lateral and anterior. Lateral is more important, which is basically for pain and temperature, and anterior causes carries your crude touch and pressure, right. And then these are your ascending tracts. नीचे से ऊपर जाते हैं. जो ऊपर से नीचे आते हैं उसमें तुम्हारे होते हैं corticospinal tracts. Now corticospinal tracts, again two types, lateral and anterior. You can see this is more laterally, this is more anteriorly. So the lateral is more important. 85% of the lateral they decussate. I'll talk about the decussations and everything. Tract, right. Now anterior is basically for axial muscles, right, and lateral corticospinal tract carries all kinds of voluntary sensation to the voluntary muscles for movement. ठीक है, let's go into detail. First let's talk about dorsal column tract. First of all, point number 1, ये हम लोग का, it is a ascending tract, right. Functions I have already told you. What are the functions of the dorsal column tract? Pressure, you have to remember, very very important, pressure, vibration. It is fine touch, because crude touch is by, if I ask you crude touch कहाँ पड़ा, crude touch is by anterior spinothalamic. When you relate and study, it becomes easier. And then you have your conscious proprioceptions. ठीक है, so these are the functions, right. So आगे हम लोग देखते हैं इनका जो पाथवे होता है. तो so they emerge, these are the sensory nerve endings जो आते हैं, dorsal root ganglion, and then it goes ipsilaterally, it goes up till the medulla, and then in the medulla, this is your first order neuron. Now from the medulla it decussates to the contralateral side, which is your second order neuron. On the contralateral side at the medulla, decussation happens at the medulla, very very important that we have to remember. And then it goes to the thalamus के कौन से पार्ट में, just remember VPL, because when you will watch the subsequent video you'll get to know what is VPL and everything. So thalamus, VPL, which is basically ventro posterolateral nuclei of thalamus, right. And then from the VPL it goes to where, it goes to the somatosensory cortex. And somatosensory cortex is area number, Brodmann's area number. I'll talk about the Brodmann's area number in other videos, right. 3 2 1, right. Okay, so this is all about the dorsal column tract. From let's talk about spinothalamic tract. In spinothalamic tract, what is it, is again ascending tract, ठीक है. And then also फंक्शन क्या है, अगेन लैटरल होता है, एंटीरियर होता है. द लैटर वन कैरीज पेन एंड टेम्परेचर, एंड देन इंटीरियर कैरीज योर crude touch and प्रेशर, ठीक है, राइट। Now the spinothalamic tract, unlike the dorsal column tract, which goes straight up, decussate in the medulla, spinothalamic tract decussates as soon as it enters the spinal cord. ठीक है, तो ये dorsal root ganglion में आता है, spinal cord में just follow the green one, and these are my own notes. So dorsal root ganglion then decussates on the contralateral side in the spinal cord itself. तो spinal cord के लेवल पे डेक्सेशन हो रहा है, ठीक है, राइट। एंड देन इट गोज straight up till the thalamus. Again it reaches the which nucleus of the thalamus? VPL, ventroposterolateral nucleus of the thalamus, and then goes to the primary somatosensory cortex, which is area number 3, 2 and 1. That's it. And also if you remember spinothalamic tract, the latter one, pain and temperature. So pain and temperature is carried by what kind of afferent neurons? ठीक है, we'll talk about different types of neurons and receptors. Right now just remember afferent neuron, which is basically a type of nociceptors which carries your pain and temperature, A, delta and C type. ठीक है, इन दोनों के बारे में we'll talk about in another video, types of neurons and everything, receptors, right? So and then comes a corticospinal tract. Now corticospinal tract also you can call it as a pyramidal tract, and function क्या होता है? It carries your voluntary sensations, ठीक है, it carries your voluntary sensations of the body. Again it has got two part, the lateral one and then the interior one. See, now the important thing about corticospinal tract is, first of all, originates, ठीक है, let's talk about the origin first. Where does it originate? Since because and it is a descending pathway, because it is a descending pathway, मतलब इट ओरिजिनेट्स फ्रॉम द ब्रेन, ऊपर से नीचे आ रहा है, तो ओरिजिन कहाँ पे होता है? तीन जगह से ओरिजिन है इनका। कंट्रीब्यूशन 30%, 30% एंड 40%। सो 30% origination, sorry, 30% it originates from the primary motor cortex, ठीक है। अगेन 30% होता है फ्रॉम द प्री मोटर कॉर्टेक्स, ठीक है, राइट। एंड देन 40% होता है फ्रॉम द सोमैटो sensory cortex. These are all the Brodmann's area. We'll talk about in another video about Brodmann's area. Primary motor cortex, area number 4, area number 6 and 8 is premotor cortex, and area number 3, 2 and 1 is somatosensory cortex. So यहाँ से originate करते हैं at when you see the different layers of cells in your cortex, तो वहाँ के लेयर नंबर 5 से ओरिजिनेट करते हैं, जिनको भी ऑल्सो कॉल बेड्स लेयर, ठीक है। एंड दीज डिफरेंट डिफरेंट एरिया से दे ओरिजिनेट, राइट, राइट, ओरिजिनेट कर रहा हूँ, एंड देन व्हाट हैपेंस, इट कम्स डाउन डाउन, लेट्स सी द पाथवे. सो फ्रॉम the primary motor cortex, the supplementary motor cortex and somatosensory cortex, everything, so it originates from these three things, and then it comes down at the level of internal capsule. Now what happens internal capsule, if you see, so let's say this is your internal capsule. You would have read about internal capsule a bit more, so let's talk about it just in short. This is your anterior limb, this is your genu, and this is your posterior limb. Anterior limb is not very important, genu is little bit of important because यहाँ से हमारे cortico bulbar fibers निकलते हैं, ठीक है, cortico bulbar fibers, जो बेसिकली क्या होते हैं? यूएमएन होते हैं ऑफ क्रेनियल नर्व न्यूक्लियाई, ठीक है। और जो पोस्टीरियर लिम्ब के एंटीरियर 2/3 से हमारे कॉर्टिकोस्पाइनल ट्रैक्ट्स निकलते हैं, ठीक है, ओके। सो लेट्स से इफ यू मेक अ ह्यूमन बॉडी, so these, so this is your corticobulbar fibers and this is your corticospinal tracts. For the entire body you have this, and bulbar you have for your head and neck, right? So internal capsule से होते हुए cerebral peduncle को क्रॉस करते हुए it comes down at the level of medulla, and at the level of medulla basically you have to remember lower मेड्यूला ओब्लोंगाटा के लेवल पे इट डेकोसेट्स। अनदर क्वेश्चन, कहाँ होता है डेकोसेशन? ठीक है, you have to remember the decussations of each and every pathway. Then again, pyramidal decussation, so hence known as pyramidal tract, and I've already mentioned over here. And then it comes out, so 85% of them decussate इनिशियली, और कुछ जो होते हैं वो स्ट्रेट आते हैं और इस लेवल पे आकर डेकोसेट करते हैं यहाँ पे। जो 85% होते हैं वो लैटरल बनाते हैं, और जो नीचे आके करते हैं वो एंटीरियर कॉर्टिकोस्पाइनल ट्रैक्ट बनाते हैं। ठीक है, बट अल्टीमेटली ऑल ऑफ देम डेकोसेट्स जब एकदम नीचे आ जाते हैं वो, एंड देन दे गिव दैट सप्लाई टू द न्यूरोमस्कुलर जंक्शन एंड ऑल योर वॉलंटरी मसल्स। ठीक है, राइट। सो द लैटरल, वही मैंने बताना था कि 85% डेकोसेट कर जाते हैं, और जो 15% होते हैं वो एट द लेवल ऑफ स्पाइनल कॉर्ड करते हैं। बट मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट इज मेडुला क्वेश्चन, राइट? दैट्स इट. So this is all about the tracts, and the other related topics from this particular topic that I would suggest you to watch the video is Brodmann's area, definitely. Thalamic, thalamic nuclei, and thalamic and hypothalamic nuclei together have taught. So please read about this in this. So I think this covers the basics of all the tracts, and yeah, they know important. And also there is one more tract, number 4, which is your spinocerebellar. Not very important, so I haven't covered here. And spinocerebellar tract, अगर important लगेगा तो I'll cover it in another video. Conscious proprioceptions. Just remember one point, and it's not very important. So